Leviosa.
Well done, dear.
I
think we're going to need another feather over here, Professor.
Hi everyone, I'm Luke Hector and you're watching The Broken Meeple. This is a YouTube channel about board games where I give reviews, top 10s and my honest opinions, regardless of the consequences. We'll get on with the show in just a minute, but first a quick word from my sponsor. As a fellow gamer, you'll understand this is unacceptable. The solution? Head down to my new sponsor, Kiender.co.uk. Kiender stocks many of the hot new releases as well as some old hidden gems. Free delivery on orders over £30, further discounts on bulk purchases, and even 5% of your spending refunded back to you as points to be used for further discounts down the line. If you use the referral link in the description below and sign up for a new account, you'll get 5% discount on your first order over £60. So let's make gaps in your collection a thing of the past. Get down to Kiender and start saving today. Thank you for listening and enjoy the rest of the video.
Get on with it.
So today I'm taking a very quick look at Spellbook because there's not a huge amount to talk about with this game because it is a pretty simple engine builder from Phil Walker-Harding. Now Phil Walker-Harding, typically when his name goes on games I'm thinking, gateway level, I'm thinking simple, I'm thinking fairly smooth, not clunky. And of course we know Phil Walker-Harding from games like Sushi Go and some staple gateway games. So it's like, okay, hopefully this is nice and simple. That being said, I didn't even know this existed until Paul Grogan grabbed a copy at Essen because Spellbook is one of the most generic titles I can think of for a Magic game, and the cover wasn't exactly singing to me either, so I glossed past this like crazy, but thankfully it was on retail after Essen around here, and so I figured, you know what, I'll grab a copy and see what it's like, because hopefully it'll be a quick affair. So is this a gateway game to sing the praises of, or is this going to be a long forgotten relic? Let's find out. Spellbook is an engine builder game where you are learning spells. Now this deck of cards may look big, but it's not quite as big as you might think. Essentially each player has a bunch of coloured cards. 7 different colours, 3 different cards in each colour, so effectively 21 cards. But what you do at the start of the game is that you randomly select one of each colour, and everybody has those colours in front of them, those exact spells. So here we go, I've taken complete, random, there we go, there's my 7 spells. They come in 3 different levels of complexity, but you basically just choose 7 and everybody has those. There are rules in the game for having easy sets for a few games, but completely ignore that, it's unnecessary, these are not complicated abilities, okay? But what happens is you essentially have to manage this resource of materia, as they call it, but basically it's mana. And these come on these little tokens. There are some out on an altar for everybody to collect as the game goes on, but you can also draw them out of the bag. Each turn you essentially have 3 actions. You have a morning action to get more mana, you have a midday action in order to store mana on your familiar board, which is essentially a way of getting more victory points and triggering the end of the game, and an evening action which typically involves learning a spell. You either spend 3, 4 or 5 of the same colour as the spell to learn the first, second or third level of the spell. Each spell gives you some ability, obviously the higher the level the more powerful it is, and you basically just carry on in that fashion doing a morning, midday and evening action, and just keep going on until somebody has learned all 7 of their spells, or somebody has completely filled up their familiar board, in which case game end and you see who's got the most points.
That's easy!
Yeah, that's really about it. It's as simple as that. But games that are similar, well, we've seen card-based combo building and engine builder games before, but Dominion came to my mind as I was playing this. The original deck builder. You've got a bunch of different cards that you can use in Dominion, but you only select a few of them, and then they're all out, and that changes kind of how the game will progress. Well, similar thing here. You've got the 21 cards for each player, but you only select 7, and there's different combinations of cards that you can have, like tons of them, and of course that's going to dictate your initial feeling as to what strategies you go for and how the game's going to progress. So even though there's no deck building in here, this kind of felt like a similar setup to Dominion. But in terms of the rest of the game, nothing particularly new. I mean, you've got a resource to manage, you've got different combos to go for, and obviously you have a strategy to aim for. But yeah, there's not a ton of games that I can really call upon to say, oh, it's exactly like that game. But the Dominion one kind of came to my mind first. So my overview was somewhat quick, and well, that's one of the pros of this game. It is super simple to play and teach. Wow, I mean, is it gateway level? If you play with the easiest spells in the game, yes, I actually dare say it's a gateway level game. This feels like kind of like the entry point to more complex engine builders. And there's not a huge amount of engine builders that I can say are perfect gateway level, with the exception of something like Splendor, for example. But the idea that this is one where you have a different setup each game. I mean, if you think Dominion's too tough for people because deck building's a weird concept to players, then, well, this is an easier concept to follow. But the rules are dead simple. This rulebook is a lot bigger than it needs to be, and that's mainly because it explains every single spell in every single level in an appendix, in detail. So there is no point where I'm looking at an FAQ for this game. But in terms of the actual rules, okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pages for the main game and 1 for setup. And this is big writing with pictorial examples. I mean, the altar has literally a paragraph of writing on it and the rest is just a pictorial example. Learning this game from the rulebook is a cinch. Teaching this game can be done in literally about 2 minutes. I think I've managed to do it in that time to brand new players, because there really isn't a lot to teach. So you can get this set up nice and quick, because all you got to do is to go, right, here's the 7 spells I want to use. Everybody else, go find these 7 spells. Here's the pouch, here's an altar with 5 things on it, familiar board, go. You can just get started, and the game is pretty quick. Even with 4 players, the game should not take you longer than 45 minutes unless you've got a massive slow player. And that's rare for a game this simple, because there's not a lot of actions you're really doing. But cool, blimey, it's been a while since I've played a 2-player game that's in a box this big, that is that lightning fast. The 2-player game I played the other night, I swear it took me just as long to teach it as it did to play it. Okay, yeah, that's slight hyperbole, but it felt like that, because we got going and the turns were literally just, right, mana, done, your turn, right, I'll take mana and store 1, right, done. Okay, I'll take those and I'll learn this spell, right, done. Right, I'll take 1 from here, done. How's this look? Even when you've got a bunch of abilities and they start comboing off each other or you start triggering them, they're not complicated actions, and some of them are just upgrades of the normal actions. So a 2-player game of this is one of the fastest 2-player games I have ever played. And that's a solid thing if you want to play this with your gamer spouse. But even with 4, it's still not a long game. You won't be waiting that long before it gets round to your turn. And with simple rules like this, it feels kind of refreshing to play a game this streamlined. Component-wise, I mean, the game cost me £30 in the UK, £30 slightly less from Kiender, and wow, I mean, you get a decent amount of nice stuff in here. Familiar boards, standard boards, but these cards, it is a bit weird that they don't round the corners off, so they're a little bit on the sharp side, but fine, I'm going to put these in sleeves soon anyway, so what do I care? It's not a big deal. But the artwork on these cards is beautiful. I mean, Space Cowboys always make their games look good, and this one is no exception. I mean, it literally is just a beautiful looking game. The spells have all got unique artwork on them, and the graphic design is really easy to follow, and it just looks very pretty. On top of that though, you've got this really cool bag with the design on it, with these acrylic little mana tokens that have got different like colors, but they've also got different rune symbols on them, and it just looks beautiful. For £30 or less, I'm surprised they actually managed to get this to that standard. Okay, I've seen stuff like Alice's Garden perhaps be like the benchmark for this kind of thing, but honestly, it's not an expensive game, and with the amount of variety that you have with the different spells that you can use and the ways that you can play, it's not a bad value for money prospect here.
Is bread free?
Yeah.
We'll split an order.
The different combos that you can pull off in this game with strategies are not the most varied ever, but it is a bit like Dominion in the sense that you get to, decide, right, well, on these spells, what's the best way I could do this? I mean, if I learn the red one first, that could combo into the white, and then I could eventually learn black, and that would allow me to get a lot of stuff each turn and then store it all on my familiar board. But which strategy you go for, whether it's learning all the spells or doing all of this, is another consideration, because both are a timer for the game, and you've got to watch the other opponents to think, well, how long is it going to be before one of them triggers it, or am I going to trigger it first? Do I rush to get all 7 spells done, even though they're going to be low level and low points, or do I take my time, get some high value stuff, not worry if I'm triggering the end, and go for it that way? But the different array of spells that you use do lead to some nice, cool, different paths to victory that you can try out, or at least, different ways to play. Not stupidly extensive, but bearing in mind we're talking about a gateway light level game that is taught in about 2 minutes and playable in about 45 5 minutes tops. It's not meant to have like mounds of rules or mounds of strategies or anything. It's sweet and simple, and yet still has you thinking on your turn, right, well, I could do that, maybe if it's worth doing this, and some of it's going to be dictated by the colours that you pull out of here, so there is a luck element, yeah, fair enough, but you can take from the middle of the board, and you've got ways to turn free into a wild, and of course, the spells will help you mitigate some of that luck. It's not going to burn your brain at all, but it just gives you enough to think about so you don't autopilot it. And if you don't want to play with other players, well then just play it solo. There is, yes, a solo mode in the game. Not the most complex solo mode in the world though, and you basically just flip a board over and it's essentially like a timer thing. You do have to beat the target score on here, so I am glad it's not a beat your own score, but effectively what you essentially do is what you normally do in the game, but each turn you have to put a bead on here, and of course it then refreshes the altar now and again or gets a certain amount of points, and so what you're essentially trying to do is end the game before it gets too many points that you're just not keeping up with it. Very simple, but it allows me to bring this game out and play it in what, like 20 minutes? 25 tops or something? I mean, you can play this in lightning speed time because the turns are pretty straightforward. You don't have to think too long about it. And the AI is very easy to pilot because you're basically just going, token, done. And a couple of minor rule changes for certain spells. Really straightforward, and I'm glad they threw a solo mode in here because this makes for a very quick engine builder for me to get to the table. Now that being said, there are some negatives. There is a luck aspect, as I mentioned, for drawing stuff out of the bag. Your spells can help to mitigate this, but, you know, if you're going to take 2 random from the bag, you may just get lucky and draw the exact stuff you need. Even with the draw beads from other spells, you may get one that says, right, I get to draw 6 things, yay, and they're all colours I don't need. Oh, well, that kind of sucks. And then somebody else might draw and it's like, oh, I got 4 blue, right, I can grab enough to do this spell now. And that's a little annoying, but it's a light game, it's not played for very long, so that whole luck factor doesn't really come into play too much. And I can kind of get over it, but it is a negative nonetheless.
I'm lucky.
That's not a superpower.
Yeah, it is.
No, it isn't.
Yes, it is.
No, it isn't.
Yeah, it is.
No, it isn't.
The game's arc is also a little bit disjointed. It's a snowball rolling down the hill, as most engine builders are, but this one is less so a slope and more a tiny little drop as the snowball just gradually starts to get rolling and then falls off the cliff. The game arc is quite slow at the beginning where you are building up mana, and most of your first 5 to 10 turns, because they are super quick, are literally just going to be drawing things out of the bag and maybe storing one on your board, and that's literally it. You might not learn a spell until like your 5th, 6th, 7th turn, who knows, you know, depending on what you draw, how much you store, or what it is you're aiming for. You're going to aim for the cheapest spell you can quick, or you're going to save up and up and up and get a really good spell level off the bat. So, you know, the start of the game is pretty slow going, but then by the time people's engines start kicking off, it ramps up to lightning speed, and suddenly before you know it, it's like, oh god, somebody's already filled up their board. I mean, you didn't have much of your board filled up, but now you can store 4 of the same color, so whoop, whoop, game over. And you've got to be aware of that. It can throw some people off, and it might make some people feel like it's a little unsatisfying in that respect. But I haven't heard, you know, I've heard like one person comment that, and that was literally because somebody did manage to steamroll near the end. Everybody else has generally found this game very positive, but, you know, that game arc does feel a little bit odd. It's not smooth, it's not linear, and, you know, you may find that a problem. I don't find it as big a deal, but yes, when I'm teaching the game and we're getting started, I have to kind of emphasize to people that, yeah, your first few turns are going to be pretty boring. Eventually, your turns are going to get more interesting.
Boy, that escalated quickly.
There's really not a lot of interaction in this game either. What there is all positive in the sense that, oh, I get to do this cool thing and you will get some little thing as well, or I get to maybe copy one of your effects, but that's it. There's no take that, which is a good thing, but then there's also no real interaction other than the fact that you're racing each other for triggering the game end, or, you know, you're racing each other to the point where it's like, right, can I build my engine and get it going quicker than you lot can get your engine running? And so playing this with 4 players is reasonably quick, but there's no real need to play it 4 players, you know, and honestly, you play it solo and you will get pretty much the exact same feel in the solo mode as you will from a multiplayer game, with like a couple of minor exceptions. So yeah, quick and easy, but not exactly, you know, it's a Euro game at the end of the day, so this isn't going to be one that you're going to be talking lots over or getting immersed into, especially as the theme is very generic and, you know, each spell does its thing, but it's basically Euro mechanics. There's no real theme here, there's no real sense of immersion, and as I said, not much interaction. Spellbook is not getting as much praise as I would like it to, and it's a bit of a shame because I think this will be forgotten by a lot of people. It's got a generic pasted on theme. We've seen this whole fantasy magic thing a million times. It's got a fairly unassuming cover. It's got probably the most boring generic name that you could possibly get for a board game, almost like an AI thing generated it. But if we can look past that, this is a very solid gateway light level engine builder. You know, you've got a decent amount of variety with the card combinations that you can pick. You've got decent component quality. I love these little acrylic pieces. You've got a good bag. You've got a storage tray that you basically assemble and it gives you the sellotape to stick on the edge, and that might sound tatty, but hey, it's solid and it does what it needs to do. It's a great discard pile for your mana, and then once you've got it all, you just tip it back in. Nice and simple. I can teach this game in 2 minutes, 2.5 minutes tops. I can get this game done in 45 minutes tops, 20 minutes if you're playing it 2-player, 15-20 minutes if I'm playing it solo, and I can actually play this solo. It does a lot of things right. Does it blow my mind? No. This isn't particularly anything unique. We've seen this before. It's not the most innovative thing ever. And certainly the whole familiar storage board thing is not the most satisfying thing ever. It's easy, but, you know, whoopee, I'm putting stuff on the board and getting some points. It's very generic. And in terms of the balance of some of the cards, there are a couple that maybe seem a little bit better than others, but it depends how you use them. And of course, a bit of luck factor does exist. But you know, this is a game that I would like to bring out every now and again. It doesn't take up much table space, it's good value for money, around just under £30. Honestly, I think this is getting a bad rap from some people and it feels a little bit harsh. I'm giving this a strong 8 out of 10. I think it's a great game. I don't think there's enough in it that's unique and different and really engaging to say, right, this is a 9, 10 out of 10 game. But I urge people to give this one a look. You want an entry-level engine builder that can be taken to the max of complexity if you want gamers to get a little bit more out of it, then this is definitely one to give a look at, because Phil Walker Harding knows what he's doing when it comes to streamlined games, and that is definitely one word that sums this game up. Streamlined. It's smooth, simple, yet gives you some interesting little choices, but it's done and dusted nice and quick so that after you've had a bit of fun with this, you can move on to the main event. I think 8 out of 10 is deserved. I do recommend this game, highly recommend it, to, you know, with a seal of endorsement, and, you know, I feel like this deserves a bit more praise than it's actually going to get, and, well, if one of us is going to do it, it'll be me.
I admire its purity.
So that's it for me on this episode of The Broken Meeple. If you like what you see, then please thumb it up on YouTube and thumb it up on Board Game Geek when this goes live on the site. Check out all the other reviews I'm doing at the moment. There's a lot of them, and you know, we'll see just how many I can get through before the end of the year. But of course, let me know your thoughts on this. Did you find this too generic, too basic, too boring for you? Or do you actually find this one a really good fun one to play? Do you play it with 2 or 4? Have you played the solo mode? Would you compare this to other games? You know, has it surpassed other games for you? I mean, would you rather play this than something like Dominion or Splendor? That's entirely up to you, but let me know your thoughts down below. Until next time, regardless of how pointy you want your cards to be, it's still only a game. Just bear in mind they might be a tiny bit of a health hazard. Bye for now. Take care.